Vikings wore horned helmets into battle. The image storms in fully formed and dramatic. Tonight we test it. We'll ask where the horns came from, what archaeology shows, and why costume beats memory so often. By Vikings, we mean seafaring peoples from Scandinavia active during the Viking Age, about the late 700s to the mid-1000s. That dating anchors the question to real graves, real gear, and real fights. The myth spread because it looks incredible. Horns shout wild courage in a single glance, which made them perfect for painters, opera stages, and later for tourism and Halloween. Money and identity helped. 19th century romantic nationalism wanted bold symbols, and a horned silhouette sold the North as fierce, ancient, and unique. Our first evidence beat is the practical mechanism. Battle gear survives because it works, and horns on a helmet fail the physics of combat. Horns catch blades, ropes, and rigging. They give every opponent a handle, which means a small twist can wrench your neck or spin your head off balance. They add leverage where you want deflection. A plain rounded dome sheds blows. A horn turns a glancing strike into a dragging hook. They waste weight. Iron was expensive in the Viking Age, so fighters put mass into mail, shields, and simple domed helmets that protected eyes and skulls. Next, the finds. Archaeology has recovered only a small number of Viking Age helmets, which itself tells a story about rarity, recycling, and cost. The one near-complete Scandinavian example is the Gjermundbu helmet from Norway, found in 1943. It is a riveted rounded helmet with a nasal guard and no horns. Other helmets from the same centuries around the North Sea world, the Hjelm helmet in England, the Tjeli fragment in Denmark, and several pieces from Sweden, mirror that practical style. No horns. Graves overflow with shields, spearheads, swords, buckles, beads, and tools. So the absence of horned war helmets among thousands of burials is meaningful. If horns were standard, we would expect at least a few. Third, consider the exceptions. Northern Europe does show horned headgear, but almost all of it sits far earlier or in ritual settings rather than on medieval battlefields. Bronze Age finds from Denmark, like the Vexo helmets around 900 to 1000 BCE, sport sweeping horns and elaborate decoration, they likely belong to ceremonies, processions, or leaders who needed symbolism, not protection. Iconography from the Iron Age and the early medieval period adds hints. Torslunda plates from Åland show dancers or ritual figures. Some carry protrusions that look like horns, while others wear crests or animals. Even the Oseberg tapestry fragments suggest costumed figures, not rank-and-file fighters boarding longships. When the setting shifts to ritual, horns appear. When the setting shifts to combat, they vanish. Our fourth beat is replication and experience. Historical martial artists and reenactors test kit under controlled drills, and the verdict on horns is consistent. You can wrestle a horned helmet wearer by the protrusions. You can yank, lever, or pin the head with minimal effort, which ends bouts quickly and badly for the wearer. Shipboard work offers another check. Rowing, hauling sail, ducking under spars, and scrambling across shields all favor sleek gear that doesn't snag. The fifth beat is the art pipeline that cemented the myth. In 1876, the costume designer Carl Emil Doppler outfitted Norse characters in Wagner's Ring Cycle with horned helmets. Opera needed silhouettes you could read from the back row. Doppler's choice spread through posters, touring companies, and illustrated programs, then into schoolbooks and later film. Romantic painters had already primed the pump with dramatic horned figures. The opera gave those canvases a marching soundtrack, while publishers and souvenir shops multiplied the image across Europe and America. Once the template set, confirmation bias handled the rest. People noticed any old depiction with horns and learned the rule backward. Viking equals horns, not stage costume equals horns. Let's separate correlation from causation in one clean line. The frequent pairing of horns and Vikings in modern art correlates with 19th century costume decisions. It does not cause horns to appear in Viking battle graves. Compare counterexamples from other cultures. Roman cavalry parade helmets sprout glittering crests and faces for display days, yet their combat versions simplify to practical forms. Anglo-Saxon and Vendel period helmets carried animal crests or plate decoration, but the surfaces still deflected blows rather than inviting grabs. Even when decoration existed, it rode low and hard, not far-flung like cattle horns. Material economics reinforces the point. In a world that reforged scrap and prized wrought iron, detachable horns would often be removed, reused, or buried as separate pieces if they had existed widely. They are not. This does not mean Vikings fought in minimal gear by choice alone. Many warriors likely relied on shields and thick caps because helmets were costly, which also explains why complete helmets are rare in the record. Where does uncertainty remain? A few images stay ambiguous. and ritual headgear with antlers or horns probably existed in some Scandinavian communities before or alongside the Viking Age. We cannot rule out that a chieftain once donned a horned piece for ceremony, oath, or theater. But the battlefield pattern remains stark. Practical helmets in graves and museums, horns in rites and later art. Why does art stick harder than artifacts? Because one powerful picture beats a quiet tray of rivets and rings. Stories travel through classrooms, costume shops, and sports logos, while excavation reports move more slowly. A horned helmet compresses a culture into a single emblem, and our brains love emblems. Tourism locks it in. Airports and gift stalls sell what strangers expect, which means horns on mugs, mascots, and magnetized fridges feed a loop of recognition. Media repetition then makes the false look familiar. The more we see it, the truer it feels, even when every shovel says otherwise. Here's a compact integrity check. If horns were common in combat, we would see them across fines, fight manuals, and injuries. Instead, we see rounded bowls, nasal guards, and blade cuts consistent with smooth surfaces. Therefore, the strongest alternative view that horns once served as elite battle markers lacks supporting artifacts. The evidence favors ceremony and stagecraft, not war. So what principle helps you separate costume from combat? Ask 3 questions. Does the feature reduce target area, avoid handholds, and survive repeated blows for its weight? If any answer is no, assume theater until artifacts prove otherwise. War punishes ornament that gets in the way. Apply that rule beyond Vikings. Feathered headdresses, giant shoulder spikes, and dangling chains look fierce in posters, but fail in mud, salt, and sweat. Real armor works like good engineering. It simplifies shapes, manages weight, and exploits curves to turn force aside. In short, the horned Viking battle helmet is a 19th century costume that conquered imagination, not a weapon of the North. The graves, the physics, and the replications all agree. Horns belong to ritual and opera. Battle belongs to domes, nasals, and discipline. The distilled takeaway is simple. When you weigh legend against metal, choose the metal. Subscribe for more myth versus reality and tell us which beautiful but doubtful image we should unmask next.